So if you're watching this video, you're probably wondering if you should go with a Sony camera. Today, I'm going to give you my top 3 reasons why Sony cameras are popular and why they have worked for me. So hopefully this video will help you out in your decision if you should go and invest your money into the Sony ecosystem. And you might be wondering why I'm a little bit qualified to talk about it. Well, I kind of have a little bit of Sony gear, so I'm not just kind of speaking of no experience. This is literally the ecosystem that I've been using for the last, amount of like 5 years or so. So the first things first of why Sony is a popular ecosystem and camera brand is the autofocus. The autofocus of the ecosystem of Sony has been very great throughout the ages of every camera that they've come out with since their mirrorless development. For me, I got into the Sony line when I got a Sony a6000 at the time because I had gotten my Canon camera stolen. So I decided to go ahead and invest into the Sony line because of the price point that I had gotten the camera, and I wanted to go ahead and see what the fuss was all about at that time. With my Sony a6000, I started going ahead and trying out to do a little bit more videoing and photos and everything. And to be honest, that camera was a solid camera to start with to get more into photography and videography, which helped me out a lot, especially with filming myself due to the autofocus that it had for the price point. The camera, when I got it, I think was like at around $450, and it really never disappointed that it actually made me want to stay with Sony to upgrade eventually, which what I had upgraded to at the time was my Sony a7 III. I don't have that camera anymore, but it was a great camera whenever I did have it, and I also went ahead and invested into the a7R III because the autofocus for photo and video on those cameras was just unmatched with anything that was out there at the time. Was it the best camera with some of the specs that it had compared to other competitors? Technically no, but the main thing of why it really drew me to go into the Sony line of things was their great autofocus. For me, whenever I was using my Sony a7 III and a7R III, I was using it really for kind of creating behind the scenes videos for what I started my YouTube channel, and as well for some videos for people and photos and everything, which was really great. There was, for example, at the time, the Lumix S5, which they had 10-bit internal kind of coloring and grading and everything like that, but the autofocus was just not reliable. And every time I looked it up, I was trying to find something that would have reliable autofocus, and every time that I would see people talk about it and their experiences, just came back to Sony. So behold, I guess after a lot of years of investing into Sony, it's been something that I've stuck with despite some up and downs with like every brand that you'll ever have. The autofocus has always been very, very good and has made everything so smoothly to use for photo and self-videoing, since I tend to do that a lot for YouTube. I never have any issues when it comes down to making sure that I capture what I needed to capture, and honestly, it just works very smoothly and very fast. My Sony a7 IV and my Sony a7S III and my a7C Mark II, as well as my ZV-E1 now that I have, which I'm currently filming with, has had great autofocus that I honestly don't miss the shots whenever I'm trying to capture what I need to. Of course, you're always going to have a miss, situation, but it's not really the fault of the camera. It's more that I didn't have the setting that I should have had for what I was trying to capture. And that's just user error, not so much the autofocus. But 9 out of 10 times in reality, the autofocus is very reliant and it's very good, especially with now the updated autofocus with like the Sony a7C Mark II that has more for different types of autofocus. You have for obviously people, for animals, insects, now birds, trains, and whatever else, like even a butterfly effect or whatever it has to be able to capture that, which is something very cool to have within a camera, especially depending on your needs that you need. Well, it just is probably going to be a good reason to go for if you need that fast autofocus, especially with how good it works with the ecosystem that they have, because it's just a flawless system to me personally that I've had no problem with it, especially when I know what kind of settings I need to put to capture everything I need to as sharp as possible and in focus. Now I want to jump into reason number 2 of why Sony is popular. Well, if you can't see from the lenses in front of me, having great access to lenses is something that Sony does. Sony is very kind whenever it comes down to having amazing Sony glass, and this is not even the G Master lenses, this is just the Sony G lens that I have, but also third-party lenses. You have great access of lenses, the type of every price range that you might need to make sure that it works compatibly correctly with the camera itself. So you have the fast autofocus that the camera provides, as well as having fairly good stability when it comes down to stabilization and everything. But if everything and anything, it just works flawlessly with the camera and the lens, no matter if it's a Sony lens or a third-party lens. You get to have a little bit more access for your budget to be able to invest more than just the body itself. One of the reasons why I loved Sony Sony and why I stayed with Sony is I started using their Sigma lenses for the APS-C line that I was able to get for my A6000. I started using the 16 millimeter and I had like some other, odd ranges that they had at the time from Sigma, and it helped me out to find the ranges that I thought were best for myself so I could experiment a little bit further to find the right lenses that I wanted to invest in heavier, especially for a higher budget eventually. Once I upgraded to full frame, it was really great to have my Sony a7 III, like I said, that I paired it up with my Sigma 35 millimeter f1.4 that I had for the longest of time, until I started upgrading to more zoom range lenses like the Tamron lenses, because they had the 17 to 28 and the 28 to 75, and eventually I kind of sold those because I got the 20 to 40 that I'm filming with right now by Tamron, and then the 35 to 150 as well by Tamron, because this bad boy over here is an f2 to 2.8. Despite of the size of this lens, it's still very great because it made me condense down a lot more on every other lens that I could have gotten, especially with the range that it has from 35 to the 150, because it's a sweet spot for me, and especially for the aperture of an f2 to 2.8 that was under $2,000, instead of having to spend on just, Sony lenses, how other camera brands tend to have with their native lenses, and they don't give you much options. Canon. Now they're maybe doing a little bit more, but yeah, anyways, we're not going to bash any other camera company right now as much because this is not really what it's about. It's just, giving you the popularity reasons of, why people choose Sony. But having even access to really cheap lenses like this Rokinon 35mm f2.8 that creates really wonderful things. I mean, for I think it's like $200 and some. I've even worked with 7 Artisan to be able to get a basically $200 50mm 1.8 lens, I think it was, that is still pretty great. I still have it and I use it because it's just a simple lens to just use that works flawlessly with their autofocus, and it just works nicely. Now, I also have a Sigma 24 to 70 because a lot of these lenses are under $1,000 if you can find them now used as well, but even when they're new, they're most of the time on the average of $1,200 rather than having to only go with the G Master lenses that can be from $1,600 and above, and most of the time the new ones are about like $2,000 and more. So having that access to multiple, third-party lenses to native lenses where you can, allocate the budget where you need to accordingly is very nice to have, and that's what's made popular for a lot of people using Sony, because sometimes just the body alone will set you back. Let's say with my Sony a7S III, if you bought it new, it was $3,500, so having to spend an extra $2,500 for, a lens, not so exciting. Same thing with, a7C Mark IIs and a7 IVs and whatever else. It just gives you a little bit more reach with your budget, so it lets you create more, and which is really nice for most people. And now for finally the third reason of why Sony cameras are popular. It really is the results that you can get delivered by these diverse cameras that you have access to. Yes, a lot of people might have their ups and downs when it comes down to their cameras in the sense of what they each give you, because obviously if you go with the R lines of the Sony a7Rs, you get more for a photo type of camera with some video. If you go with the a7 IV, a7 IIIs, they're meant to be more, hybrid, as well with the a7C Mark II. And you have the a7S and the ZBE1, they're more catered for video. So you're obviously going to have a little bit more diverse type of cameras that you're going to have to pick and choose what you're willing to give up and what to give. And, as well, kind of just what you want or what you don't want, what you're okay with, not having, because you're going to have to make some sacrifices, but they still deliver really great results. And that's what makes it so awesome to have. I've had some obviously discussions that I've wanted to have better firmware updates when it comes on to Sony, but at the end of the day, my cameras are able to do what they need to do without any issues. Yes, it would be great to have obviously firmware updates that I know that they could give us because they've done it to some other of their other cameras, but at the end of the day, I went into getting these cameras knowing how they worked and how they were going to perform within seeing them how they were at launch and everything that came out, knowing that if there was not really an update going forward, I would be okay with it. Obviously, I've had problems where they make updates for other cameras and not all of them, but that's a different story. It doesn't really matter right now. It's more about how well they give you results whenever you're using them. I used the a7C Mark II when I was in New York City to create photo and videos at the US Open, which was super great. It did everything I needed it to do. It worked flawlessly. I had some crispy videos, some really great photos that I was able to just have an experience out there at the US Open while testing out a lens for Tamron, which was really great to experience. As well with my Sony a7 IV, I've had it since 2021 in December, and I've been able to create so many memories and photos and videos all around the world that it has been so awesome to just have a reliable camera that I can do really great video because it's oversampled from 720p down to 4K, so it has really great video, but also some amazing stills that I have with 33 megapixels that I have enough room to, crop around whatever I need to. While I also can use my low light king of a camera, the a7S III, as well as my ZV-E1, since they share that same sensor, but a different budget, and they give me some amazing results. I even recently made a little bit of a short video on the channel that I had where I made my, one camera, one less setup, where I used my ZV-E1 with a Tamron 20-40 to just, document something in my backyard, making it look as good as possible. And I was able to create that, which in theory, with all the, budget, if you will, of that setup would be like under $3,000 for what you're getting out of it, is a really great setup. And for me personally, the results and everything that these cameras can give are just really breathtaking, and that's why they're become very popular. You have great low light, you have the great colors and everything. Now that some people might have hated the colors from Sony beforehand because they had some issues, and I totally agree with that, but now you kind of have no excuse. If you can't color grade the Sony S-Log3 kind of like, let's say, footage or anything of the sort, like with the S Cinetones or something, it's not really the camera, it's just going to be you. And it sounds horrible to say, but that's just the truth. So at the end of the day, having those top 3 reasons just really help out. Having amazing autofocus within all the cameras has been really great to have reliable, footage and photos that I need to create, as well as having, the options of third-party lenses to my native lenses from Sony to be able to have a wide range of lenses without breaking the bank, to have acquired basically a good amount of lenses to create the content that I need to. And of course, having those amazing results come out from the camera with the nice colors and nice footage and files that I'm able to color grade so nicely and play around with, so I can create the best content that I can, so that I can just enjoy my art and create videos and photos that I like to share with you, and as well anywhere on social media for anybody that might stumble upon it. So it's pretty great to have that, and that's pretty much the reasons, at least my reasons, of why Sony is popular and why it has been something that I've chosen to stay with and invest in after all this time. So now I want you to do me a favor and please let me know down below your experiences using the Sony line of cameras. What's been really great for you and what you recommend to people, why it was your choice, what made it popular for you to want to go with Sony. I'm sure it'll help other people that will be reading the comments in hopes to find any experience that they can relate to. And if you don't have a Sony line of base camera, share your experiences, whether it's with another camera brand so people can see, but as well, if you have any questions, make sure to leave them down below, and I'm sure somebody else will come in and say hello to try to give you a nice answer if I can't do it myself. So that way we can have a nice community little talk and discussion to know why you chose Sony or why you chose something else. With all that said and done, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, share this video with a friend. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.